recording. Anyway, so I started the recording. This is my web page. I hope you can find it one way or another. And while many of you have taken courses with me, so you know what my web page is. And in particular, you know that, around here, I have a list of all the courses that I teach. And right now we are in GIS TNK 055. Welcome. And yes, here is how the website looks like. Nothing unusual. One word of caution is that this is the web page for the lectures. So this course has 3 parts: the lectures, in which we are right now. It has MATLAB labs, and it has labs in QGIS. So these are 3 separate parts, and I will be teaching the lectures, and I think Leo and Anastasia will be teaching the other parts. So this is only about the lectures. Down here on the web page, I have the practice exam, and the real exam will look almost exactly the same as the practice exam. In particular, this first, the cover page will be, well, essentially identical. So there are some problems and so on. So you will have to send your solutions within 1 hour from the exam start time. Well, and then there are some generic rules, like, you know, you have to give some explanations. If the problem has this answer box or some place where you need to put your answer, you have to put your answer in there. You don't have to calculate the exact values if there are numeric answers. Formulas are fine. And you don't have to give long explanations. Brief explanations are also fine. You can use anything you want during the exam, but the exam should be individual work. It's not group work. You can write in English or Swedish. You need to get half of the points on the exam to pass this part of the course. And if you want 4 or 5, then you should speak with me after the exam. Well, immediately after the exam. I will basically ask how you solve the problems, maybe ask some extra questions. And if you cannot explain how you solve the problems, you will fail the exam. So again, you want to get 50 points. If you send me the exam, I see there are 50 points, well, then you get the grade of 3. If you want a higher grade, we will have to speak. Okay. So that's about the exam. There are also some practice problems, well, there are no homeworks or anything. You basically work on the practice problems or practice exam problems whenever you want, and if you need help or have questions, then ask me a question. So now we'll go into the first set of lectures, well, introduction, and then also speaking about the Voronoi diagram. 1 slide with the administrative stuff, still finishing on the administrative stuff. Yes, so there are 3 parts to the course. The 3 parts are not very much connected to each other, but they're all about GIS. So essentially we look at GIS from different perspectives. Well, okay, but I didn't say what GIS is, Geographical Information Systems, but hopefully you know what it is. It's the name of the course also. So in the lectures, we will be looking at theory behind GIS applications. What's really is there in terms of mathematics, algorithms, and other things. In the MATLAB labs, you will be actually getting your hands dirty with processing some geodata. And in QGIS labs, you will basically learn the QGIS. I'm not quite sure what you will do there, but that's in the next period, so don't worry about that too much. So all 3 parts influence your final grade. All 3 parts have full range of the grades from failing to 5. Well, in the lectures, as I said, we will only have the exam. There will be a test in MATLAB labs, and there will be some reports in QGIS lab. And your final grade will be the average of the 3 grades that you get in the 3 parts. but you really need to pass all 3 parts to pass the course. So if you fail any of the parts, you will have to redo it. Okay, any questions on the administrative stuff? You can use chat or just unmute your microphone, raise your hand to ask questions. If you don't have now, you can also ask questions later. That's perfectly fine. Again, by email, chat, or otherwise.
Hi.
Yes.
So if you say that if we have failed one of these exams, we need to repeat the course, or we need to repeat the exam?
Excellent question. You only need to repeat this exam, not the whole course. Right. I should mention that. Right.
I had a question regarding the exam as well. You said that if you want to try for a 4 or 5,
yes.
You fail the exam if you can't explain your answers.
Correct.
But I mean, if you still get, say, 75 points out of 100, does that still apply? Do you still fail the exam if you can't explain your answers?
Correct. If you cannot explain how you got those 75 points, well, then you will fail.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, and I mean, also during the lecture at any time, you can just unmute your microphone or ask questions about whatever is not clear. All right, so, well, one slide of trying to, okay, here I have the explanation of what GIS is. So, well, it's a system which essentially works with geographic data. Surprise, surprise. And there are lots and lots of applications for it. We're not going to go through all of them. In fact, I think I took a lot of this information from the Wikipedia page on geographic information systems. So it's interesting that GIS science, of course, it uses a lot of things from the usual science, from algebra. You will see a lot from other parts from geometry, from other sciences, but also GI science has contributed itself to the development of science in general. And one example is this so-called fractal dimension. So don't worry too much about what it is. We're not going to go in depth of what it is, but that was something that was observed when people were trying to measure the length of the boundary of an island. So I guess this is Great Britain. And well, depending on what is the size of your measuring stick, you can get different answers. So if you measure with a stick like this, then, well, you get certain answer. Of course, you're skipping some of the bays and so on and so forth. If you use a smaller stick, then you look at, finer complexity of the boundary, and you get a larger answer. And if you use an even smaller measuring stick, we're going into all these little notches, then you get an even larger answer. And that led to the development of fractal theory, which we will not look at, but it does bring us to this, well, question which is quite central in GIS, and that's the question of discretization or precision, rasterization, well, whatever you call it, looking at the data in different formats. What precision should you use for your data in order to get close to the reality, and how far from the reality you are when you're using different precisions? Those are all central questions, and we will look at some of them in depth in this course. So that was just an example of GIS science and the regular science, exchange of ideas. One example of GIS analysis is the application of the so-called Voronoi diagram, and this is something that we will study in depth today. Is well, the epidemiological analysis, not looking at the recent events, that's quite old development. So looking at cholera outbreak, understanding from where the different people got infected. That was really done with the help of something that can be called Voronoi diagram. And yeah, I mean, I have links here to more modern developments of this kind of analysis, where you're looking at how the different strains of viruses go from place to place, including, of course, the COVID these days, but also Ebola and Zika and many other viruses. So if you want, you can click on this link. And we did have one of the authors of this next strain give a talk at KTS a couple of years back when travel was still allowed. Anyway, so that's an example. Again, I took this example from Wikipedia. You can read more about that if you want. Sorry, phone notification. Okay, so just a couple of real-life problems that we may want to look at in order to see where the GIS applications come into the play. So, you know, you may have some roads, you know, this red network, which is already in place, and you may want to install another network of pipelines, bike paths, whatever, new roads, and you want to understand where the new roads intersect with the old roads. And then maybe you will have to you know, establish some intersections and so on. So that's one real problem which comes up many times in practice. Another problem here on the right is that, well, maybe you have a city, here is the city of Norrköping, and its population density is represented with the heat map. And well, maybe you're establishing a new facility. Could be post office, could be emergency station. And you want to understand what part of the population will be served by this new facility. So right now, different parts of the population are served by existing facilities. Who would go to this new mall or would be served by this post office or emergency station? And we can reformulate these as GIS problems or classify them as the GIS problems, speaking in GIS parlance. So this intersection of the old and new roads is called the map overlay. So you have two layers in this map. So the red layers and the blue layers. And you want to understand how the map will look like if you put these layers one on top of the other. And for this example on the right, for understanding who will be served by the new facility, what you need to do is you have to calculate the travel time for, well, not for every person, but maybe for every pixel, for every point in the city to this new facility, and compare it to the travel time to, you know, some old facilities. And then, well, one way of deciding who will be served by the new facility, well, maybe those who will have shorter travel time to this facility. That's, of course, a bold assumption. You don't always necessarily choose to go to the shopping center which is closest to you. There could be other things. But if you are the server, not the client, if you're establishing the new, I don't know, service station, post office or emergency station, then you are deciding whom you're going to serve. And for that, you will have to calculate the travel times to different parts of the city and decide which parts you will serve with the new facility. And if we look at even deeper into what is behind these questions, then we will get to the practical geometric questions. For the map overlay, essentially what we want to do is to find the red-blue segment intersections. So you had your old roads, the red ones, you have your new roads, the blue ones, and you want to check where they intersect. And of course, one possibility is that you just go through all possible pairs of red and blue and test where they intersect. That's not the most efficient solution. You can do things faster, but we do not really go into the algorithmic details in this course. We are rather trying to understand what kind of questions you want to answer and what kind of primitives, the geometric or geospatial primitives, will you have to use in order to give answers to questions like this. Do two segments intersect and where they intersect? And we will look at this at the second lecture. And again, coming back to this example on the right, understanding who will be served by the new center. What you want or what you may want to do is to look at all the existing centers and the new center and try to propagate the kind of travel time waves. I will give you more examples, more examples today of these travel time waves. So you would try to understand who can be reached, I don't know, within 1 minute from this center. Well, maybe some people living around here, if anybody lives there at all. Who can be reached within 1 minute from another center, which, I don't know, maybe is located somewhere here. Well, those are the people living here. Who could be reached within 2 minutes from that one? People living there. And so on. So you will be propagating these travel time waves, 3 minutes and so on. And at some point, these waves from the different sources will collide. So I'm trying to change the color to blue. Well, okay, I will also use red to show the wave propagation from this center. And then at some point they will collide. So there will be these, points which are equidistant. The distance to go here is the same as to go here. And anything on this side will be assigned to this old center. Anything on this side will be assigned to this new center. And of course, there could be more centers around and they will all propagate these waves. And how does the decomposition of the city look like into the different zones assigned to the different centers? That's the kind of question that we want to answer here. And that's what we will study today. So yes, finishing with these two examples, the really basic geometric or geographic questions, whatever you want to call them. If you want to know whether two segments, the red and blue, intersect, well, how do you do that? You look at the line, from A to B, and you're asking, are the points P and Q on different sides of this line or not? And there are linear algebra tools that help you with that. And we will look at some of them. Turning to our questions, still staying here on the left, segment intersection. You need to do a few primitives, understanding whether a point P is to the left of the line AB, whether point Q is to the left of this line, and so on and so forth. For that, we will need some linear algebra things, and I will go over them with you, but that will really be a crash course. Well, not really linear algebra course, just talking about what's needed. And I'm assuming that quite a lot of things you already know from linear algebra. If not, go back to a linear algebra course, or not take a new course or something. So, I mean, this is a master level course. I'm assuming quite a lot that you're already either know or able to learn. As in other courses, I mean, I wish I could really put the knowledge into your heads. You would have to work quite a lot. Anyway, but I will give some necessary linear algebra prerequisites for this problem. Now here on the right, remember again, we are trying to understand. So we have these, well, black, in this case, points in the plane, and we want to split the plane, or the square for that matter, into the regions which would be assigned to these different points. And the property of our partition is that, well, for any point in this region, the closest point out of black points, out of the sides, out of the original points, should be the same. So this guy should go here, and this guy should go here, and anybody in this region should go to this point. Should go in the sense that this is the closest side. So this would be longer. You don't want to go there, and anything else would be longer. And similarly, for anybody in this region, the closest side should be this one. So that's the splitting of the plane into regions such that within one region, the closest side is the same. So one point about terminology. Terminology is the key, and I did tell this joke in other courses, so I apologize to those who already took courses with me and know this joke, but it never gets late, and it applies to this course as well as to any other course. There are two problems in modern science. Very often similar things are called with different names, and very often the same name is used for different things. So terminology is a mess, and I'm really trying to plow through and well, give the right terminology. If you have any suggestions for better terminology, I'm always willing to listen to that. So these original points for which we want to split the plane, they are often called sides. And then all the other points in the plane are just the points. And again, this Voronoi diagram is the decomposition of the plane into cells such that within any cell, for any point, the closest side is the same. And this is what we are going to study right now, and actually look at something called generalized Voronoi diagram. Okay, so that was the kind of introduction. And now 15 minutes to introduce you to the Voronoi diagram. So on the left here, it's a definition of the Voronoi diagram. So you have a set of sides in the plane, R2, I'm saying that's the plane. And you want to decompose the plane into cell such that for any cell, you have the same closest side. Or if you want to look at the nearest neighbor function, so you want to find the decomposition such that in every cell of the decomposition, for any point, the nearest neighbor is the same. And of course, the boundaries between the cells are those places where you have more than one closest side. You could have vertices of the Voronoi diagram. For them, you have 3 closest sides. And there is something called radius. That's the common distance to the 3 nearest sides. And this circle, which contains the 3 nearest sides for a vertex, is called the V circle. And this vertex of the Voronoi diagram is called the V vertex. And this common distance is called the V radius. So here on the right, you have a picture. And well, I guess I took it from Wikipedia. It shows you how the Voronoi diagram is built. So you have these sides, the black dots. And well, as I was trying to draw, I think this is a much better animation. Each of them starts the kind of wave propagation. So imagine that you drop, a stone in each of these sides, and the plane is, the lake. And when you drop the stone, you have these circular waves coming out of the stone. And where these waves meet, you have the edges of the Voronoi diagram. So you have the places which are equidistant from 2 sides. And sometimes these waves, 3 waves meet at a point, and you have these points, and these points are the Voronoi vertices. Okay, so at this point, I want to draw something. And for that, I will be switching to my other screen. So I will still do the screen sharing, but now I'm using my other screen where I have more kind of white space. So I will be showing the slides. That's still the same slide on top here. And at the bottom, I will have the Gemboard. So, well, if what you see right now on your screen is kind of too small for you to look at because the slides are too small, well, you can open the slides in a separate window or in separate application, whatever you use. And you can also open the Gemboard separately in the application or in the window, so you wouldn't have to always look at the zoom. Anyway, so I'm starting to draw on the Gemboard, so this will be about the Voronoi diagram. And the simplest Voronoi diagram you may think of is the Voronoi diagram of just 2 sides. So maybe this is side 8, maybe this is side B. No, 2 post offices. And you want to understand, well, how to subdivide the plane between A and B, who should serve A, or whom should A serve, whom should B serve. And hopefully you know from the elementary geometry that to answer this question, you draw the perpendicular bisector to the segment AB. So this should be perpendicular. And anybody on this side goes to A, anybody on this side goes to B. Hope that's simple enough. So that's the Voronoi diagram of two sides. Decomposition of the plane into, well, this time two parts, one part corresponding to A, one part corresponding to B. If you have three sides, then what do? Well, you know that this is the bisector between A and B. So everybody here goes to A, everybody here goes to B. Here is the bisector between B and C. So everybody here goes to B, everybody here goes to C. And finally, this is the bisector between A and C. Everybody here goes to C, everybody here goes to A. So these bisectors between the segments AB, BC, and AC, they split the plane into what, I don't know, now I guess there are like 6 parts. And each part is assigned to one of the points. So I guess to the point A, you would assign everybody over here. I will change the color to, this maybe A will be the red point. So everybody here would go to A because any point here is closer to A than to B. It's on this side, on the left of this bisector. And it's also closer to A than to C. It's on the, again, left side of this bisector between A and C. And then everybody in here will go to C, again, for the same reason. And everybody in the remaining part will go to B. So again, that's pretty elementary picture. One thing that I want to show you, it's not a software that we study, but it's a neat tool. So I'll just show it during the lecture, kind of to play with it. It's called Geogebra, so geogebra.org. And you can start, well, something called Geogebra Classic. There are also other kinds of Geogebra. This is an interactive tool. Again, we don't study it in the course, but it's quite useful because you can quickly, put in some points. And then there are some tools like to draw perpendicular bisectors, let's say between A and B, between B and C, and between A and C. And well, the bisectors meet the same point at a single point, the 3 bisectors, just as I had on my picture in Gemboard. Why do they meet at the same point? I'll leave it for you to figure out. It's, again, elementary geometry. But anyway, so now, I mean, you can move the points around. That's the cool thing about GeoGebra, and things changing interactively. And you see that no matter where you put the points, the 3 bisectors meet at a common point. And now to show you some of the things that we talked about. So if you take, any point on this line and, well, you draw these segments to this point and to this point, and you can see what the distance is between point D and point C. And also you can see what the distance between, again, point D, oops, sorry, distance between point D and point B. So these 2 distances, the 2 segments I just drew, maybe I should make them, again, different color. Make them red, and also this one red. Oops, sorry, I wasn't very successful. I want to make this segment red, and this one red. Okay, so now I have 2 red segments, and now I can move this point, and well, I can visually see that the distance to B and to C are the same, but you can also watch over here at the lengths of the segments and see for yourself that no matter where the point is on the bisector, the distance is the same. In particular, what it means, so we were talking about circles. So if I draw the circle with this center and this radius, then again, no matter where the center of the circle is on this line, the circle will pass through the 2 points, right? I mean, because that's the radius of the circle, which is the distance to the 2 points. But now the interesting thing that I wanted to show you is that guess what will happen when the center of the circle will be at this point, where the it wasn't too successful, where the 3 bisectors intersect. So if I now move the center of this circle onto this point, what happens is, there you go, the circle goes through A. And that's exactly this Voronoi vertex. So this circle is the Voronoi circle and its radius is the Voronoi radius. So this point is equidistant from the 3 points, from A, B, and C. Again, if I put this one, make it also red, I will not try to measure its length, but hopefully you can, well, you can see visually, and also it's a circle, so all 3 segments are the radii. So this is the Voronoi vertex, it's equidistant from the 3 sides. Okay, so I'm leaving Geogebra now and going back to our slides. And so this is, so what I showed now was this example of the Voronoi circle, Voronoi vertex, and Voronoi radius. So the center of the circle is equidistant from 3 sides. And again, I was showing it an example with only 3 sides, but even if you have more sides, like we have over here on the slide in the right corner, well, if you look at any vertex, it's equidistant from 3 sides. So that's the property of Voronoi diagrams. Any point on an edge is equidistant from 2 sides. Any vertex is equidistant from 3. Okay, so that's the definition of the Voronoi diagram. Any questions about it? Okay, so so we were looking at the Voronoi diagram in the simplest case of Euclidean distance, well, just the standard distance in the plane. But really, when we are talking about, travel time from the post office to assign zip codes, or if we are talking about, shops or emergency stations, well, we don't really fly. So maybe what is more important is to take into account different distance, maybe not Euclidean distance, but maybe some other kind of distance. And yes, you can define the Voronoi diagram in the so-called travel time metric. Again, you have a set of sides, so everything is the same. The only thing which changes is the definition of the nearest side. So the nearest side is now not in the Euclidean sense, not in the usual sense, but it's really the fastest to get to, using roads, using other transport, and so on. And by the way, when we're talking about the Euclidean Voronoi diagram, the original Voronoi diagram, if we're talking about distribution centers like post offices, but you would be using drones to deliver packages from those centers, then again, the original, the Voronoi diagram, like what we have here in the Euclidean metric, again, that it kicks back. All of a sudden it makes sense again. But here on the right, I took the picture of 2 kinds of Voronoi diagrams. So the one on the very right is the Voronoi diagram of the in the Euclidean metric of a certain set of sides. And here on the left is the Voronoi diagram of the same size, but in a different metric. It's actually an L1 metric. Don't worry about it. Don't worry too much about what it really is, this L1 metric. But anyway, different metric, you have different Voronoi diagram. Okay, so in particular, if you have a different metric, then of course the wave propagation may look differently. So I was drawing these circles as the propagating waves from the sides. But if you're talking about the travel distance, then your wave would cover everything that you can travel to within 1 minute. And that doesn't have to be a circle around your site. It will be something along the roads and so on. And here are a few examples okay, I'll show you a few examples of such Voronoi diagrams. But before doing those, I wanted to remind you about something that at least I taught in the basic logistics algorithms course, and bring in this analogy of wave propagation. So this is the Dijkstra's algorithm for finding shortest paths on the graph. I will not go through the whole algorithm, but essentially what Dijkstra does is it maintains a set of vertices kind of reached by the shortest path. And originally, the only vertex which is reached is the vertex S, the starting point. And then it kind of has this wave propagation feeling. So at any point, the wavefront is the boundary between what has been reached and what hasn't been reached yet. And you propagate the front, you kind of look at the vertices and see which vertex will be reached by the front soonest. What is the vertex to which you can get from S as fast as possible out of those that are yet unvisited, unreached by the front. And then you add this vertex to the set of the visited vertices, and you continue the propagation in this way until you reach your target. Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. I guess we'll take a break, and we'll look at some examples of Voronoi diagram in the next 45 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 2:15. So yeah, I'll go back one slide. We were talking about yes, Voronoi diagrams on set of points in the plane, maybe using various metrics. But then we were also realizing that sometimes you don't really fly from point to point. Sometimes you do, like if you use a drone, but sometimes you don't. You're really working on a network. And you can imagine this wave propagation on a network. Well, Dijkstra algorithm is one example. So how will it look like? I'm switching to the next page in Gemboard, where I just drew some network. And maybe, maybe you have a red point and a blue point on this network, and you want to build a Voronoi diagram of the 2 points. So then again, the waves would be how far can you reach from the blue point within 1 minute? Well, maybe you can reach here, here, and here, within 2 minutes, here, 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 and so on. And similarly, you would do the wave propagation, Dijkstra style, from the red point, how far you can reach within 1 minute. Well, and maybe here on the left in the picture, you have, a much faster network, because maybe on the left you're in the urban setting, on the right you're in the terrain. So maybe within 1 minute you can reach everywhere here. Maybe within 2 minutes you can reach everywhere here. So then really the Voronoi diagram for these 2 sides will be this decomposition of the network into 2 parts. Everything here on the left will be assigned to the red point. Everything here on the right will be assigned to the blue point. So that's how the wave propagation in general Voronoi diagram may look like on the networks. And I'll just show you a few examples on the slides. And I do, so almost all the examples are links. So I'm linking to the places from which I got these pictures. I'm not going to click on the link right now, but if you want, you can do that. And here we have a network and some sites, the black dots. And I guess these dashed lines are just the usual Voronoi diagram in the Euclidean metric. So you can do that. You mean you have some sites and some network. You can still decompose the plane into the cells with the usual Euclidean metric. But well, you can do something smarter. Like here is the decomposition of the network according to the travel time. So this is the network of roads, and you travel along any road with the same speed. And well, if you're here on the blue road, then probably you go to this side. Here in the pink, you go to this side, and so on and so forth. And anywhere where you have, equidistant I guess from this point you're equidistant to this side and maybe to this side. Well, you have the kind of quote unquote edge of the Voronoi diagram, even though it's not really visible here as an edge, and so on. So yes, here is another example, the Los Angeles decomposed. There are a few sites, and then there is this road network. And depending on what is the size, what site is the closest to travel to, you color the different parts of Los Angeles in different colors. So lots of examples that you may see. We will not be producing such examples, but we have to understand the idea, how these examples can be produced, well, by wave propagation from the sites. Now, the sites don't have to be just points. You can have, these polygons. I'm not sure what they're represented in this particular case. You may click on the link and read the paper if you're interested. Again, and you decompose the city into the, well, you can still say Voronoi cells based on which of these red polygons is closest. Okay, so you may very well have non-point sites, or you can call them non-point features, and you're asking yourself, what is the closest feature? And maybe if you're in here, then the closest feature is this. Oops, I did click on that. Well, doesn't matter. Yes, if you are somewhere else, if you are around here, then the closest feature is maybe this one, and so on. Yes, that's an example of the Voronoi diagram for non-point regions. I guess they're schools. To which school should kids go? Yet another example, I guess that's a blueprint of a shopping mall, and there are toilets, and well, here is a GIS problem for you. You have toilets in the shopping mall, and everywhere in the shopping mall you have to put these arrows that point to the closest restroom. So yeah, this restroom can be on a different floor and so on. So I'm not sure what the sites are here. Don't really see them, don't really see the toilets here. But I guess these different colors of the network represent the places from which you will go to different toilets. And again, on the boundary, like over here between two colors, well, there are two toilets from which you're equidistant. Well, that's good because you have two options. But on the other hand, as we will see in a minute, the points on the Voronoi edges, and especially on Voronoi vertices, are the points which are as far as possible from the sites. So you have very far to go to one side, very far to go to the other side. Anyway, lots and lots of examples. I will show a few more later in these slides. But what I wanted to show now is the wave propagation in a polygonal domain. So we were talking about and looking at wave propagation in the Euclidean plane when we didn't have obstacles. Well, we may have obstacles, and we still can think of wave propagation. So this is your source point S, and maybe T is the target point. And you try to understand what is the shortest path from S to T. So what you can do is, again, drop drop a stone at this point, if you imagine that this is a lake and the red parts are the islands, and see how the wave propagates from S. And the wavefront at any time tau is what can be reached from S by the time tau. And the wavefront changes when it collides with vertices and so on, but still you can do the propagation and track how the wavefront changes. And then the point when the wavefront changes T, that's how long you need to get from S to T. So for this particular thing, I have a link to applet. That's an applet done by a student of mine back in Helsinki. So it's actually an interactive applet. You can change things. It's really cool. And it shows much more than just wave propagation. And S is the starting point. Again, you can drag it, and then you click on propagate. It will take some time, and then it will start propagating the wave. So only look at this top left part. It shows you how the wave propagated. And in fact, there is a slider, so you can see how the propagation went on. So it goes, the wave the gray wave goes like this, so on, so on. Now the wave collides on itself, and this is the bisector. Again, the bisector means there are two shortest paths, 2 points in the bisector. So anywhere here, so the green shows you the shortest path, you go like this, to anywhere here you go like this, and so on. And then you see how the wave propagates around the obstacles and so on and so forth, and covers the whole polygon. And don't worry about the other pictures. So this wave propagation is a very generic thing, which you can and should imagine when you are talking about Voronoi diagram in travel time metric, in any other metric. We will now go through more examples. So I was talking about this analogy when you're dropping a stone in a lake and you look at how the wave propagates through the lake. You can also use this grass fire analogy, imagining that the polygon is grass and the fire travels with unit speed over the grass. So you ignite the starting point and see how the grass burns, the holes don't burn, and well, the shortest path from S to T is the time when the fire reaches T. So you can also use that analogy. You can have various starting points, quote unquote. The starting things, the sites don't have to be points. So in particular, in this animation that I did, you have this line called T, and that's the whole line from which you will do the wave propagation. And in this example, the holes, actually they are not obstacles for the fire. On the contrary, they are built of highly flammable material. So whenever the the grass fire reaches the hole's other side is immediately ignited. So again, you can watch how the wave propagates from T. This is how far you can reach from T, with 1 minute, 2 minutes, and so on. Now, when you hit a hole, the whole hole is ignited, and the wave propagation continues on the other side of the hole, and so on and so forth. So again, an example of wave propagation from a non-point source. The sources don't have to be points. In fact, here in the left bottom corner, I'm showing the Voronoi diagram of two segments and the point. So I have this blue segment and I have this red segment, and the gray is the vertex where the two segments meet. And anything which is blue goes to the blue segment. So out of the blue, gray, and red, for any point within the blue segment, is the closest one. For anything inside the red region, the red segment is the closest thing, the closest feature out of these three: the blue, the gray, and the red. And anything in this gray cone, the closest thing is the gray. Well, is the vertex. So again, that's a Voronoi diagram of three things, three features, three sides. Two of them are segments. One of them is a point, is a vertex. Yes, you can make Voronoi diagram of whatever you want. You have a set of sides. None of these sides has to be a point. All of them can have arbitrary shapes, and you can have arbitrary metrics. So in particular here, I'm showing something which is called the medial axis of a polygon. So you have this black polygon, this closed curve, and this grayish line or grayish tree inside this polygon is the medial axis of the polygon, which is the Voronoi diagram of the polygon's edges and vertices. So in particular, any point on this medial axis is equidistant from two features. It's equidistant from two sides. So the point right here, I can annotate, the point over here on the medial axis is equidistant from these two edges, because really this thing is the bisector of this angle. The point on this part of the medial axis is equidistant from these two features, from this and from this. So this is the same thing. Yeah, you can probably see the analogy. If you remember, well, here is the back, this Geogebra applet. We were talking about the bisector and any point on the bisector being equidistant from two sides. So bisector is the edge of the Voronoi diagram. Any point on it is equidistant from two sides. So similarly here, any point on the medial axis is equidistant from two edges. And the good thing about medial axis of Voronoi diagram in general is that you can find high clearance paths. So if you want to plan a path in this polygon, I don't know, maybe from, let's say, from this point to maybe this point, how should you go from this point to this point in order to stay as far from the polygon boundary as possible? So you want to have high clearance path. Well, the answer is that you have to go along the medial axis. So this is your best path. Why? Well, if you are anywhere not on the medial axis, like on this, at this point, then, well, here is the closest feature. You're kind of too close to the wall. And the question is, can you actually be further from the wall? And you say, of course, yes, you can move this point over here. You know, again, you have the same wall which is closest, but now you're a bit farther from the wall. But if you get to the medial axis, well, here is how far you are from one of the walls. You cannot really get somewhere here because another wall will be too close to you. So the point on the medial axis is kind of locally as far from the two walls or as far from the two sides as possible. Again, it's probably easier to see here in the usual Euclidean case. If you are somewhere here, well, then you know that you are in the Voronoi cell of C. So here is your closest site. Can you be further from any of the sites from A, B, or C? Well, of course, you can move farther from C. While you are within this cell of C, your closest point is C. So if you go like this, well, you're farther and farther away from C. Can you go all the way here? Well, you will be far from C, but sorry, you will be too close to B. So when you're here, again, your distance to the closest site is quite small. Even though you're far from C, you're quite close to B. And to kind of be in the middle, so that's why that thing was called the medial axis, to be equidistant from B and C, to be kind of as far as possible from B and C, you want to be on the bisector between them. Of course, different points in the bisector also have different distance to B and C. In particular, if you go like this, like this, like this, you are further and farther from B and C. But when you reach this point, you start being too close to A. So now your closest point is A. And in fact, as we already observed, when you're at the Voronoi vertex, well, the distances to A, B, and C are all the same. So there is no way that you can be farther from one of the sides than when being in this point of the Voronoi vertex, the point of intersection of the bisectors. So in particular, again, this circle that you see here now is the largest empty circle. Empty meaning empty of the sides. Okay, and that's very important in quite a few applications. So yes, high clearance paths is one thing. Again, if you want to find the largest empty circle inside a polygon, then you want to check the Voronoi vertices or the medial axis vertices, because these are the places where you are as far as possible from the sides, from the features that define the Voronoi diagram. So here is again, I guess that's a picture from Wikipedia. Yeah, so the black dots are the sides, and the black lines are the Voronoi diagram, and the blue is the convex hull of the points. I mean, of course, if you put the circle somewhere very far from all the sides, then the circle can have a very large radius, you know, somewhere here, a huge circle. But well, if we are looking for a circle which is close to the sides, like inside the convex hull of the sides, the largest empty circle would be either at a Voronoi vertex like here, or it will be on the edge of the convex hull where the edge intersects with the Voronoi edge. So these red and blue circles are the largest empty circles. So this is an immediate application of Voronoi diagram, finding largest empty circles, finding places which are as far as possible from all the sides. Okay, next thing is farthest side Voronoi diagram. So for the Voronoi diagram, we were decomposing the plane, or whatever we had the network, into the cells so that the closest side is the same within any cell. And we can similarly decompose the plane or network into cells so that the furthest side is the same within every cell. So the farthest side, or the farthest point Voronoi diagram, is the same as the Voronoi diagram, but instead of looking at decomposition based on the closest side, you look at the decomposition based on the furthest side. So you have this farthest neighbor function. In every cell, the farthest neighbor is the same. And just like the Voronoi diagram was good for finding the largest empty circle, the farthest point Voronoi diagram is good for finding the minimum enclosing circle, or the circle of smallest radius that encloses all the sides. Okay, so you want to put a fire station or something, or post office within your city, and you want to reach every point in the city as fast as possible, or in other words, you want to cover your city with the circle of the minimum radius. Where should the center of the circle be? It should be at the vertex of the farthest point Voronoi diagram. Well, there is also, it can be on the midpoint of the diameter, but let's not worry about that. So we will see it on the next slide, Voronoi, a farthest point Voronoi diagram. So only the points on the convex hull of the sides will have cells, and the edges will form a tree. And instead of talking about that, let me show you the farthest point Voronoi diagram. So here on the right, you have the farthest point Voronoi diagram of a set of sides. So these are the dots. And well, those points that are kind of inside the set, the sides, they are never furthest. They are not farthest for any point in the plane. But let's say the points which are over here, what is the farthest side? What is the farthest black point? Well, it's P1. It's this one. Okay. So this is the farthest point. I know for points which are here in this cell, the farthest point is P3, and so on. So this is the farthest side Voronoi diagram, and I'm not sure either in this or in this vertex, you have the center of the minimum enclosing circle. And the reason why it is the minimum enclosing circle, well, it goes through 3 of the sides, P1, P2, and P3, and it encloses all the other sides. So if you change this circle, like decrease its radius, then you will lose either P1, P2, or P3, or you will lose all of them. So this is the minimum enclosing circle. So again, the Voronoi diagram is good for finding the largest empty circle. The farthest side Voronoi diagram is good for finding the minimum enclosing circle. And if things are hard for you to understand for all these, having many points, many sides, how does this Voronoi diagram looks like, go back to something like this. Well, either do your own Geogebra applet or just draw things. Draw 3 points. And again, think, what is the, the smallest circle that would enclose all these points? And you think, where should its center be? And well, come to think of it, if you have a point inside one of the Voronoi cells, then you are close to one of the points, but you are far from another one. So maybe you want to be at the bisector between the 2 sides so that your circle touches these 2 points that form the bisector, right? So somewhere here. Well, if you are somewhere here, you are touching these 2 sides, but you are still not touching the 3rd side. So where should you move in order to touch this 3rd side? Well, up to here. You don't want to make a circle larger. Why moving so far? If you want to enclose the 3 sides, well, it's good to have all the 3 on the boundary. But if you have the circle with 3 sides on the boundary, you know that the center of the circle is in the vertex of the Voronoi diagram, which in this case is also the farthest point Voronoi diagram. Again, we're not going to go into details which cells correspond to which point, but I guess just from the definition and also looking at things, if you're anywhere, in here, anywhere in here, then the farthest side is A. And yes, if you're anywhere in here, then your farthest side is C. And the rest, the farthest side is B. So these bisectors, in general, bisectors define the Voronoi diagram and the farthest point Voronoi diagram. The vertices of the Voronoi diagram define the largest empty circles. The vertices of the farthest point Voronoi diagram, one of the vertices defines the minimum enclosing circle. Okay, lots and lots of geometry. Now, getting back to how it is relevant for GIS applications. So that's the essence of facility allocation, right? If you have an obnoxious facility, something bad that you want to place far from people, from sites, from whatever your sites are, well, some bad things, then you want to place it as far as possible, meaning that you want to place it in the center of an empty circle, the circle that contains no sides. How do you find this circle? Use Voronoi diagram. And if you want to put a quote unquote good facility, fire station or post office or something which has to be within a reach of your sites, then the best place to put it is in the center of the minimum enclosing circle. Use farthest point Voronoi diagram to do the facility allocation. Okay, so the last slide, just oh, sorry, that's not the last slide. So yeah, these are the applications. Now we are going into some further example, the so-called generalized Voronoi diagram. But before we go into that, any questions on applications or in general this Voronoi diagram, farthest side Voronoi diagram stuff? So it may take time, to settle in, but you look at it and think of it, and it hopefully settles in. Okay, so a slight addition to Voronoi diagrams, again important in quite a few applications, are the so-called generalized or additive, multiplicatively weighted Voronoi diagram. So here on the left, I have the definition of the Voronoi diagram. Well, for every cell, you want to have the same point which is closest, and the definition of the closest is just the distance. So the distance between the points, well, is Euclidean or travel time or some other distance. What you may have is that for every side, you also have a time specified. And, that's the time that you need to wait at the site, let's say, before your drone can fly. Or you may also think about it that, your sites are skyscrapers and they have different heights and, they're situated in different parts of the city. And you want, and your facilities are located on the roofs of these skyscrapers. Maybe these are, the heliports from which you will fly somewhere, like the emergency heliports. And again, you want to decompose your city into Voronoi cells. And for every point in a certain Voronoi cell, you would know that you want to go to this skyscraper if something happens, and then you have to take the helicopter from here, I don't know, to the hospital or whatever these helipads are. Maybe this is urban air mobility, and we will soon be flying in the drone taxis. But the catch here is that you don't just have to get to the skyscraper, you also have to go up the skyscraper to reach the heliport. And well, going up every skyscraper involves some delay, some time. And so you want to decompose the plane into cells so that in every cell, this thing is minimized. The time to travel to the skyscraper plus the time to travel up the skyscraper. Okay, so this is something called additively weighted Voronoi diagram, because associated with every point, you have a weight. Well, the weight is T, but again, one of my students was saying that it has the weight associated. So this is a weighted Voronoi diagram where weight is how much you have to weight in here. You can also think about other applications. You know, again, you may have fire stations or whatever, some other service stations. And again, you want to decompose the city into this Voronoi diagram of who serves which site, which fire station serves which part of the city. But maybe again, the time to react from different fire stations are different. So even though at this point, you know, maybe equidistant from two fire stations, maybe this fire station has a brigade that comes out much faster. And for this one, you would have to wait. Again, imagine like the brigades are on the roof of the skyscraper. So then you probably want to give this, the faster reacting station, a larger piece of your city, so that, well, again, the points in the bisector of the Voronoi diagram are equidistant from these two, but equidistant not just in the terms of how fast it is to travel to the site, but also taking into account the waiting time. So this is the additively weighted Voronoi diagram. You decompose it into cells based on based on the waiting time. So you're adding to the distance to the site, and you can similarly do the multiplicatively weighted Voronoi diagram. Again, you decompose your city or your area into the cells, and within every cell you want to travel to or from the same station, but the weight indicates the speed with which you go to the station, or with which, you know, the service from the station reaches you. So again, the same ideas. Yes, I'm again looking at this example of fire stations. Maybe the different fire brigades travel with different speed, or different drones travel with different speeds. And well, if this travels fast, but this travels slowly, then again, you want to give this guy a larger area, because it can reach any point on the bisector as fast as this guy can. So these distances are the same, where distance means distance divided by the corresponding speed. So this is the multiplicatively weighted Voronoi diagram. Okay, so these are called generalized Voronoi diagram, and they have well, some natural interpretations in terms of reaching to or from various places. And here are just a couple of examples of additive and multiplicatively weighted Voronoi diagram, where you have the weights, or the weights represented by the circle sizes. And you can see that they look differently. I mean, the usual Euclidean Voronoi diagram, the edges have straight boundaries. Here they don't have to have the straight boundaries. Anyway, we don't really want to compute these diagrams. We want to understand what they are, how they are defined, why they are defined, and what are they used for. Yeah, again, some examples of additively weighted Voronoi diagrams for the networks, and again, looking at the weights of the different yellow sites. Well, you can see that, I don't know, maybe there is a point, this point, which seems to be further from here than from here, but maybe there is also a weight associated with that point. So you can see that it's not just the regular Voronoi diagram. And here is a multiplicatively weighted Voronoi diagram. Again, some sites with some weights, and they change the way the city is decomposed into these Voronoi cells, into the service areas. Last example, it's actually from, I guess many of you, if not all, will be taking the TNK 103 course, the project course. And well, there are projects, and last year one of the projects was to do the catchment area for airports. And catchment area is the Voronoi diagram, to which airport different people go from different areas. And so here they took the 4 airports in Stockholm region and just did the usual Voronoi diagram, and you can recognize the shapes of the cells, well, straight, more or less straight boundaries. But then, of course, people don't fly to the airports, or at least not before we have the urban drone taxis. So what they did later is that they, well, kind of look at the speed at which you get into the different airports. So yeah, ratio of travel times to the airports, but more or less is the speed of the time by which you can get to the airport. And if you take that into account, you get the multiplicative Voronoi diagram, and it has curved boundaries, and here's how the cells look like. And then, yes, they took into account also some context that people want sometimes to take international flights and long distance flight. So all of a sudden, Arlanda is getting some spots which it wouldn't get otherwise. So taking some context into account. This is a kind of an extension of Voronoi diagram about which we didn't speak in this lecture, but yeah, you can also take some context into account. And yes, eventually they did, you know, the catchment areas based on everything, taking into account travel time and available flights and other things. And well, you can judge how realistic it is. So, you know, very few people will travel to Bromma, and well, around us on e-shopping, people would go to Skavsta or Arlanda. Basically from everywhere, you would probably go to Arlanda for international flights and so on. So anyway, so this is it's still a Voronoi diagram, the catchment areas of the airports, but under some very complicated metric. If you want, you can read that report and see the details. Yes, and now is the final slide on Voronoi diagrams. So if you want to define the Voronoi diagram, you have to specify what are the sites, what are the sources, the features, the objects, whatever you call them, the service stations or the facilities. So Voronoi diagram of what? Then you have to specify the metric, or how do you measure the distance? Is it travel time? Is it flying? Is it something else? And if you travel by road, or travel by, I don't know, bus or public transportation or bike or whatever. And last but not least, you have to specify weights, if there are any. Is there any additive weight, like you have to wait at an airport for a certain time before you take the flight, right? In this sense, Arlanda is probably worse than smaller airports. Or if you're talking about, you know, some other kinds of stations, maybe there are also some waiting times, weights associated with it. Or there could be these multiplicative weights, mostly not speaking about the clients, but rather speaking about the servers. Different stations, different sites, or different features may serve the clients at different speeds, may reach the clients at different speeds. So it's not about serving time, really, it's about reaching time. So then you have the multiplication in the Voronoi diagram. And here on the right, again, the implications of the definitions of the Voronoi diagram and farthest side Voronoi diagram. If you want the largest empty circle, or you want to do the facility which is as far as possible from all your sites, then you look at the Voronoi diagram and the largest inscribed circle. And on the contrary, if you want the smallest enclosing circle, the kind of minimum service size that would serve the whole area, then you look at the smallest enclosing circle and you use the farthest side Voronoi diagram for that.